All right, all of you wonderful. Oh, we're just starting this off already. So good. All right, all you wonderful boys and girls, welcome to Mission Critical Podcast, episode 36. It's going to be kind of titled Getting Prepared. Really, the subtitle should be, getting prepared. You're probably a day late and a dollar short. You really should have already been thinking about some stuff. We'll get into that a little bit. As always, we're your hosts. I'm Mark, and this is
Redbeard
here in the studio with me. And then we've got over here, Hollywood Square, upper right, we got Blake. You want to say hi, Blake, and tell everybody a little bit about yourself? We haven't done this in a while.
Yes, I my name is Blake, and I enjoy long walks on the beach, and I love scallops and butter.
And now we're moving.
This is not the dating profile. This is not the dating thing.
This is already going to be one of those episodes. So let's move it right down to Paul. Paul, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, sir.
Yeah, my name is Paul, and it's going to be hard to follow that.
Do you also like long walks?
I work in the technology field, and we're all like-minded.
Yeah. Well, we're all. I think you guys are. Is there a full moon or something? But anyway, so hey, for everybody who's watching or listening to this video, we say it all the time. We mean it every time. You are the resistance, and I think with everything that's going on in the world, as we kind of segue into our Mad Minute or our Fast and Furious, whatever you want to call this next segment that we've been doing. But no matter who you are, I just don't see how you can watch any news. Maybe if you're watching mainstream media, but if you're going out there and looking at alt media and really following people who are still journalists, I just can't see how you are not realizing like there ain't no one coming to save you. And it really is up to you. You are the resistance. And that is kind of the focus of tonight's podcast. When we say getting prepared, this will be a little bit more clear when we jump into the meat of it. But we're going to actually start talking about some things that, again, everybody's got their own backgrounds. It'll be a little bit more, if you've seen our podcast, you probably already know everybody's background. We've said it a couple times, but we're going to kind of focus on some things that, and from our humble opinions, if you're not thinking about these things, or if you're not already doing some of this stuff, honestly, you are, you're behind the power curve. And not to freak anyone out, but you might want to get into it. But that being said, we're going to start off episode 36 here. Again, always a huge thanks to everybody watching and listening, and to our guests. Blackbeard might join us later. We'll see how that happens. But we're going to get into the Mad Minute, and we're going to start right here because Jeremy is the first person to my left.
Yeah, so I got a couple things, actually. So the first thing is Henry Kissinger's dead. So take that and do with that information what you will. Some people might mourn the loss. Some people might not care. I will leave that up to you to decide how to take that information. On another front,
and before you go any further, people get to argue with you. I think the thing you left out from that statement is I believe he's playing golf with a certain somebody right now. Mr. McCain. I think him and McCain are playing golf right now. I'm not necessarily arguing with you. I'm just throwing that out there.
No, I don't. Him and many other people that we are very familiar with. And there's a couple world leaders in there as well, I'm sure.
And I'm actually using golf as the example because golf is an incredibly difficult game to play, and it's really frustrating. So I think that would be, if hell has a game that is the sport of hell, don't you think it would be golf? Yeah, because there's only one Tiger Woods, and you unless you're Tiger Woods, you're not him.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
All right, I'm sorry, I was a little bit of a
no. I
just had to add to your thing.
Good.
So okay, but continue with your rant. It's your minute.
And just quickly to your point, those bunkers have got to be a son of a bitch.
Yeah, see, there you go. I think Satan would make some incredible bunkers.
Yeah, less than optimal.
Yeah. Really.
So I have two other things real quick, and then I'll let everybody else kind of chime in if they want to, and otherwise they can do their own thing. But the second,
I'm just joking. Keep going.
The second thing is there was something that came out. I believe it was one of the Ukrainian PMs, or it was one of the higher up Ukrainian ministers. She's been in the limelight quite a bit, she came out just this week and said that the whole Bucha massacre that they blame the Russians for was all false. And they staged it.
So not arguing, but again, and I should have remembered this. So in their parliamentary system, but she's not some schmuck, right?
No.
Now whether she's, we don't know. Is she? There is always the potential. She's got to provide evidence. But
always take it with trepidation.
That's somebody in that government coming out and saying
she's a big somebody there.
Yeah, and she's not. Yeah, she's.
So it's
she's not a Paul Wellstone type of figure, right?
She's she knows a thing or two because she's seen a thing or two.
Yeah. All right, so there's two.
And then on a final note, I found it interesting that Slovakia, I believe it was their prime minister that was at a conference recently with the EU, was saying that Slovakia's sovereignty is very important and that it needs to do things that might be outside the scope of its obligations to NATO and the EU because they care about their sovereignty, which just so people realize it's almost unbecoming of a country to say that because they are certainly beholden to the EU and NATO typically.
The only people who can get away with that stuff nowadays is Hungary, Orban, and then maybe Polish.
So we'll see how this plays out for Slovakia, but those Slavs really got a lot going for them.
Right on.
So that's all I got, gents.
All right. Anybody got any points to argue with him about all the above? Kissinger, the whole thing, the Ukrainian kind of coming out and saying, hey, we staged that. Which actually, I was kind of surprised you didn't tie that into Nord Stream 2. I mean,
that's a great thing to point out there too. Yeah,
and then Slovakia's independence. You guys want to add anything to that? If not, we're going to go over to Blake.
I forget all these scandals.
Well, there's too many to keep up with nowadays. Seriously, it's so fun.
Well, and, there's a lot to keep up with nowadays. I mean,
okay,
that's the thing.
Blake's got nothing. Paul, do you have anything to rebut? No, hang on. A rebuttal first. Any rebuttals for what Redbeard just said?
No rebuttal that won't get us off on a path to 20, 30 minutes of conversation. I
agree with that. Like that's not already happening. Yeah. All right, let's bring it over to Blake. Blake's, it's your mad minute, sir.
Well, to that point though, there's a lot that's going on, and I think that's one of the things is it's kind of disinformation by volume of information right now. There's so much static in the air. How can one see what's actually going on? You have to kind of just trust your gut in some regards. But one of the things I find that's interesting that we're seeing a lot recently is this quote unquote pneumonia that's going around China. Now, China is claiming that it's not a huge deal. WHO is wanting them to lock back down. You see Western media trying to amp it back up. So, it's kind of like, okay, COVID was or I should say the C word is season 1, the V word is season 2, and then you've got the Ukraine-Russian war season 3. It's then the dust up in Israel with Gaza is season 4. It's like they're trying to get season 5 rolled out already. And with that being kind of what seems to be happening is more towards the greater point of what we're talking about tonight is how can one prepare for that. So it just seems like everything's kind of getting boiled up again before an election cycle. It's going to get a little crazy. So that's really all I got to say about that.
All right. That wasn't really any room. Sorry, I'm going to come back over here. There wasn't really a whole lot of room for controversy there. Paul, do you want to do you want to torpedo him real quickly, or if not, we're just going to come to you for your.
No. I agree with him. There's so much going on. It's it's hard to keep track, but you have to. So I'm 100% on board there.
I did see. Oh, go ahead, Paul.
No. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say real quick to one of the points that Blake made about. The WHO and whatnot. China, I just saw something also, and I don't know enough about it, but I did see a report where China used the COVID lockdown to quell a protest over there. So they locked down an entire city.
Well, they're claiming it's some other type of disease right now, but it falls right in line with the whole,
and there are outbreaks over there. A lot of cholera outbreaks that I've seen, and quite a few other things.
Well, and that's more the greater point that I'm trying to make is it doesn't necessarily matter what the next thing is, whatever the insert bad awful thing here. It's all right. They've implemented the system before. They have the tools to do it again.
Bingo.
Now the question is all right, the first experiment went well. How far can we push the population a second time? And what kind of chaos I hate to say chaos, but what kind of manipulation and control can we gain out of the chaos? It's the old adage is never let a crisis go to waste. I mean, and if you don't have a crisis, manufacture it, damn it.
Well, and then so before we bring it to Paul for his mad minute, I mean, but you just nailed it right there. Is exactly that. I mean, and again, I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. I mean, just take a step back, look at the last 4 years. Well, I mean, honestly, if you were smart and you were paying attention, you just look back even the last 2 decades, you'll see so many examples of exactly what you and Blake just said. And again, honestly, and as we turn this over to Paul, I guess my kind of like whether it's an argument or an addition, but it's like the playbook's there. I mean, do they really think they're going to get away with it? because they're doing it. So the answer seems to be, well, they must, because why in the F else would you like, hey, we've run the flea flicker. What was there? There's a movie. I want you to run the flea flicker 30 times or something like that. There's some adult cartoon or movie, and they're like, unbelievable, a flea flicker for the 31st time, or whatever. Like, it's like, God damn, man. It's like, we know what you're doing.
It's just brazen at this point.
That's that's it. It's just straight up brazen. It's like, I know that you know that I know that you know that I know,
but it's also brazen to a point of cultural, like, or cultural programming, if you will. It's in your face so many times. Eventually a large portion of the population will break down to it and succumb to it and just go, yes, this is reality to me, and it's how does one protect themselves from that? How does one see through that propaganda? How does one, I guess, defend against it? And I think one of the biggest ways is culture. So,
well, I think that's going to fall into Paul's wheelhouse here when we start getting into how do you start getting prepared.
Paul's a smart guy.
I know he's a smart guy and he knows that tech side.
Yes,
so, Paul, let's bring it over to you for your mad minute. What's got your blood boiling here since we've last spoke?
Yeah, so real quick, I would say to respond to Blake with voter machine misfunctioning going on and Democratic judges. Appointed by Democrats are saying that that's not, a good way to go. We may be closer to the paper ballots that I think we all want, and I think that are bet. I don't know that we can get around the mail-in part, but hopefully we can. So that's a win right there. I think it's a small win, but it's a win. And unfortunately, if we don't get there quick enough, it may be too late. All right, so my mad minute is. I have so many things that could go there, but the FBI agent that was carjacked, off-duty FBI agent, carjacked in D.C. In broad daylight. Now, I believe, and again, a disclaimer, I believe it was, in a driveway or something like that. And we've heard Black Scout Survival talk about, they're coming right to your home. And, this is an FBI agent. Now, there's more details about that incident, that there could have been equipment in there that is now in the hands of someone that we don't want to have. But, now we have our law enforcement representatives, some of them, at least one, not protecting themselves. This is crazy, man. We need to look out for ourselves and, follow your laws, your local laws and so on and that. But that stuff should not happen. And nothing will happen to that person because they defund the police.
Well, I'm going to chime in on this one first. I mean, because there's like three things that I want to bring up, and they're not necessarily, again, I'm not necessarily arguing with you, but I just want to throw this out there. I mean, law enforcement are just human beings, and there's tons of them that are shitbags and they're crooked. And so, part of the story we don't know is like, hey, I've got all this equipment, and if you wink, wink, nod, nod showed up, I won't resist, and you can get this stuff, and then now we'll have this, and then, or you'll sell it and get money. So, so it could be, complicit. It could just be straight up crime. And then to that point, as we're about to talk about this tonight, well, then if that's the case, then we've got a federal officer, a federal agent who is not practicing situational awareness, home defense is, and I think we see this quite often, is probably walking around wearing it on his sleeve that he's a cop, driving a cop car home and all that shit, and then some rando probably saw him at Starbucks and just said, I'm going to follow that guy. And he didn't do any surveillance detection. They found out where he lived, and then we all got back together and figured it out. And then the next day we're fucking stealing his shit. So,
and to your point, quick, Mark, what no better argument than for us to have the ability to defend ourselves when clearly he couldn't, do it in the way that perhaps he may have. Again, we don't know all the details, but at that point, then why do we entrust people that do have some form of delegated authority when they even get their own stuff stolen? So do we not, obviously we have the right to be able to preserve our lives and our property.
Well, it depends who you talk to.
But depending on who you talk to, maybe not that, maybe not to that guy, but
matter of fact, I think if this was an Irish politician, they'd say that you have a right to be stoned to death and beaten to death just for exercising some First Amendment rights.
Yeah, that's a saucy topic that we're gonna have to.
I like that though.
Yeah, I do too.
Again, everything Blake kind of started. They're not even hiding this shit. It's like oh no, you guys protested little kids being stabbed and raped.
Yeah. Well,
You're the bad guys.
Look at what happened to Conor McGregor.
Yeah.
All right.
So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Blake, reining us in. But you can already see where this is going. It is going to be a little bit saucy here tonight. But
You're on your own.
But Paul, if you don't mind, remember that, because as we start talking about being prepared later on, I mean, that's one of the things about simple tasks that you can apply yourself to. Start thinking about working with other people, talking to other people, and it doesn't involve anything kinetic, right?
Yes.
You know, there's ways in which you can mitigate the risks to you and your family that doesn't involve a handgun, a long gun, you know, anything like that. So
to that point, what's more dangerous? What's more detrimental to a tyrannical power? One individual that goes chaotic in a burst of fire and does something absolutely horrendous, or somebody that's capable of actually fending for themselves, giving on that knowledge to another generation, building community, having independence truly in the form of liberty and independence, where they're capable of producing their own goods. I mean, that is a far greater threat to any tyrannical power.
Okay, well, so hey, we're going to be coming to you in a couple seconds. Why don't we just, if you don't mind, just remember where you are. That's a great placeholder as we get into talking about the other non-kinetic things that, you know, in our humble opinions, people should be thinking about or considering, or, you know, again, we're going to share real world experiences here that you could put in your hip pocket and start doing as well. So Blake, we'll be right back over to on that, wherever you want to go with that. I'm just going to throw in my mad minute. Mine is a mad minute. It's simple. To all the freedom-loving people in the Netherlands and Argentina, God bless you guys. And, you know, not putting any faith in any one individual, but it's a great start. And, you know, it's just sad that it's happening someplace other than America.
Weird.
You know, kind of strange. But dude, how many "don't tread on me" flags did he see down in Malay, you know, in Argentina? It's like, I was like, holy shit, what country is that? Like, you know, gosh dang it, you know, but and then to Gert Wilders, you know, and although, you know, and look, and I actually saw that one coming, because I think it was either last year I think it was last year or the year before, during all the bullshit, you know, stuff that that they had been given a proclamation like no fireworks. And look, I'm here to tell you, Americans, you probably really don't, unless you've lived in a foreign country like a Europe, like the best fireworks display I ever saw was in Warsaw, Poland. And you know why it was the best? Because there was no rules and everybody was just doing whatever the hell they wanted. And but that's what the Dutch did a couple years ago. They were told, oh, there's no more displays this year because of the and they just said F you, and they just did it anyway. So I already had a sense, and I've never really spent a lot of time in that country. I can't speak too much to what the mindset of the people are. You know, I've spent more time in France, Germany, well, especially Germany, England, you know, that kind of stuff in the Middle East. But boy, wasn't that a great indicator? You're like, that was a group of people. And then look at, and you guys know what I'm talking about. This will kind of tie in tonight. Like, and look what they're like, oh, you're going to take up our farmland? You know, like, oh, hell no. You know, so there are people out there, and maybe the people of Ireland, because you brought up with Conor, you know, with McGregor, right? Right. Yeah. And other people too that are like, no, you were not putting up with that shit. So so that's my mad minute, which is more of a positive. There's a good takeaway. I think we're starting to see alternative media, people starting to realize how to use it and realize it's out there, and more people are becoming aware that there's there's more of us probably than there are the bad guys. You know, so
and just quick to your point, you know, I told you I've had the opportunity to actually talk to quite a few people from abroad in the past 2 weeks, and it's amazing how, you know, and this kind of ties into perhaps like a world community in a sense, to kind of play off of what Blake's going to bring up, but there's so many people abroad that actually think a lot closer to we do, and it's amazing, because in my conversations, there's a lot of people that were very pro 2A, at least 2A as we see it, that wish they had firearms, but their country doesn't like it. There's a lot of people that actually have a invested interest in certain aspects of liberty as we see it as well. So there's a lot more of us, not only I think, that exist in our country, but also exist in the world, which makes sense given light of recent events. So don't discount the rest of the world based off of, a certain outlook that's being presented, because we have to remember what we see might not actually be what we see.
Because it's the same in our country, and this is where I'll end
Yeah.
it from my spot, and anyone else wants to chime in, but I'll use Australia. You're like,
Yep.
you look at Australia and New Zealand, and you look at Adair and that new guy that Australia has, and you're like, oh my God, it's lost. But I talk to a lot of people from those
Yeah,
countries.
there's good people everywhere.
And then
Yeah.
you see tons
Really
of people. They're
good
like,
people.
oh no. So it's the same in our country. Like,
Yeah.
don't let America be judged by, Uncle Joey, because Uncle
Yep.
Joey did not get the most votes of any president in the history of presidents. So yeah, there it is. There's my Mad Minute. Anybody got any comments? Am I smoking crack on that one, or what do you guys think? I don't
No.
know. What I did that. That was just a laugh. Like, what the hell did that mean?
Yeah,
Nope.
I think that the you brought up a point that I'm thinking is one of the reasons we're pro immigration, right? And what you were talking about is we want people to want to be here, to want to assimilate the way people used to do back when my ancestors came here. We just don't want to open borders. But if you want to come here and you want to assimilate, you want to do things, I think that is key. So that narrative has been lost because of the media. But I'm 100% on board. What I find is if you want to find the most pro-American, you find someone that had lived in the former Soviet Union that is now living here. Something like that. They're more pro. I mean, not more than us, but they're more pro-American than some of the people born here that they just have no idea because they never suffered.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think on that note, it's fair to say there are a lot of people who've immigrated here who do have a better understanding of our Constitution, our laws. And because let's face it, because the vast majority of us didn't have to go through that as part of our, immigration, our naturalization process. And shit, I can't remember which one of you guys I was just talking to the other night. Like we don't even teach political science. We don't teach
civics or social studies,
social,
and that's we were talking about that the other day, Mark, and that was what I was just going to bring up.
Talking about that?
Yeah, how can you possibly expect someone to be a concerned citizen, a properly educated citizen, when they don't even know what it means to be a citizen in the first place? Yeah. I mean, when you've taken the tool set away, it's a very Orwellian thing. It's actually one of the core principles of 1984. Remove the language, remove the understanding of the concept, so that you don't even know the concept exists in the first place. And then how can you possibly perform like is expected in a healthy republic when you don't understand what it means to be a citizen in a republic? I mean, you just don't have the tools. So when we don't give the kids the tool set, how the hell do you expect anyone to do anything properly? Like, I mean, to build that community, to better the nation, and then it allows these freaking crooks to just get away with whatever they want because no one knows any better.
So I'm just going to throw this in there as we jump into the heart of tonight's podcast, being prepared, getting prepared. Preparedness is both mental, physical, it's a full spectrum. But to what Blake just said, just look at the enemy, right? Again, and I'm just going to call it what it is, because I think it is our enemy. I think it's evil, and it's the enemy of freedom. And to what Blake just said, if I can just start changing the language, well, I don't have to win today, but a month from now, a year from now, 2 years, 3 years from now, and now you won't even use that same language. So now I can't even describe what it is that you're doing to me because suddenly that language is gone, and I don't even understand what my freedoms were to begin with. Like, how many people do you know that think that, well, that doesn't mean you have a right to this? It's like, no, it absolutely means you have a right to this. The First Amendment, there's nothing in the Constitution that is even, look, I get it. There's Constitution scholars and maybe there are some things that, somebody would argue that are, well, that's debatable, But but no, the Constitution is an affirmation of what our God-given rights are. It's not what the government can do for us. It's actually the other. It is intentionally designed that way. And Barack Obama was supposed to have been some smart constitutional, and he's like, oh, it's a bill of negative. I'm like, yeah, that's damn right. That's exactly what it is. It's like, no, the government can't do this. The government can't do this, right? I mean, well, but before you get too far, I just want to kind of bring it over because Blake started that. And as we get into like being prepared, one of the things I'm going to say, I'm going to be probably the negative guy here, is like being prepared means you better start learning what it is that you even have the right to do. And Blake just brought that up because I personally think all of that is being chiseled away. It's being whittled away bit by bit, death of 1,000 paper cuts until you don't even realize that, hey, I used to have this right. And there it is. Oh shit, right over my shoulder here. I've got my little Constitution book. How do people not have that?
Yeah.
Just go and look through it every now and then. You don't have to be a PhD in it.
Yeah.
It's not written. It's not.
Right.
It's not written where we can't understand it.
Well,
you know,
9-year-olds used to understand it.
Oh, geez.
You know.
Yeah. Right.
So,
yeah.
I mean, 9-year-olds also used to understand most legal verbiage
Yeah.
back then, so it's really awkward for us.
All right. So that was, I kind of went on a little bit of a diatribe, but Blake, you kind of started that. So do you want to start off on getting prepared? I mean, do you guys feel like we've done enough or we've kind of set the stage? Now we're going to sit and talk about preparedness, not kinetic, not physical, not, handguns, long guns, body armor, all that. Everybody wants to think that's the cool guy stuff. We'll do that 2 weeks from now. But for now, we're going to actually talk about, before any of that, you might want to consider some of these other things, right? So, but before we start jumping into it, fellas, anybody want to kind of last comments on the Mad Minute intro stage? Blake, no, you're looking good. You're muted. Paul, you're looking good. Okay, well then Paul just pointed right. Paul just pointed right at you.
Oh no!
Yeah, I know. I'm too close. I
pointed to Blake. In my screen, that's Blake. So there we go.
Oh no! See, that's Blake in our screen. You were pointing at Redbeard. Well, do you want to start it off, and we'll just go right into that?
Yeah, I could do mine real quick.
Okay.
So I'll tell you what's not cool guy stuff is not being fit. That's a very detrimental thing. And I as anybody who's followed us for quite some time knows, like I harp on this. I've started to harp on this, I think, a lot more than just about anything else. And it's not very cool to not be fit, and that goes against, I think, now what is considered normal, which used to be abnormal, which is it's
now
okay
you're a white supremacist.
I know, and a misogynist and everything in between. So it is what it is. But the reality of it is when you can't take more than 50 steps and you're out of breath and you have microfractures in your shins, that's a you problem. So
I'm just going to jump in real quickly just to add to that, because I know we've talked about this a bunch of times. So, and not to, I'll throw myself under the bus, and this isn't a woe is me, look at me, but I've gone through my own, like the last 3 to 4 years.
You've had a journey, man.
It fucking ain't right. And I'm so excited because, knock on wood, I don't want to jinx myself, but I'll actually, hopefully by spring of next year, be able to look. I'm not going to probably go run some 20 miles, but I'll be able to run. I'll be able to hike. I'll be able to hunt. I'll be able to do things. And then what we were just talking about, but in the right here and right now, probably another week or two, I could probably start, thinking about pull-ups and, and another thing. So, so do you want to kind of like elaborate? Because what does that mean to be physically fit, and why?
Yeah.
Right?
So basically what it comes down to is, like, I'm not talking about the very, like, necessarily the aesthetic thing. Like people have to realize that when it comes to physical fitness, in proper nutrition, like you're not doing this to be in the realm of like bodybuilding or a supreme athlete. Like if that's what you want to do, like absolutely, like go for that and set goals for yourself, go compete, do whatever. Like that's awesome.
But that is a very completely different level of fitness.
100%. And it's very niched, and it's not, most of that stuff is not going to be conducive to everyday things. So a lot of that is going to be like, yes, get out, get some cardio. Like that's one big thing, is get cardio, move around, walk a few miles, run a few miles, do sprints if you can do it. Like you have to figure out what's going to work for you for the level that you're at. The other thing is you have to mix in some type of effective weight training. Weight training and resistance-based training is extremely important. A lot of people, when they think of building muscle, they think of getting big, but that's not necessarily the case. There's strength components, there's endurance components, all of which are very much tied to weight training as well as cardio conditioning. So when you have a nice melody of those two things together, and they can marry together very well, what you have is a person that you might not niche out into certain things, or you might not specify out into certain things, but you're pretty good at most things. You're not perfect, but
you might not have an 8-pack, but you're still going to be able to lift heavy objects. You're still going to be able to run at a decent.
And that's the thing, is at the end of the day, you don't need to look pretty.
No,
Does it work? Is it functional? Does it do what the job is
Correct.
supposed to? Does it do what it says on the tin?
Yep.
Well, and then here, I'll throw my, because you're absolutely right. I look pretty, but I'm not functional right now. So,
You know, and I think the hardest part for a lot of people is when they go into like setting up some type of a routine is the biggest mistake anybody makes is jumping in 100% right away.
Yeah,
So like,
yeah.
no, like you, that is one of those things, like I kind of mentioned in the last podcast, is like, this is one of those things to where you do have to incrementally do this. You have to work yourself into it and then take the time. And in conjunction with that, it's the same thing to where nutrition is. Like you can't, there's certain things that you can get rid of, but there are detrimental factors to where if you go from eating junk food and drinking pop, I will be the first to tell you, like, unless it's medically supervised, do not just cold turkey stuff like that, because what happens is your body can atrophy and you can actually end up in the hospital. So,
well, and just not that. I mean, so
Yeah.
whether it's that or not, because the other thing I was going to say, if you
Mhm.
just like think you're just going to jump into it, now I'm going to do, 2
Yeah.
3-hour workouts
Yep.
a day, and you've never done it.
yeah, you'll burn out in 3
dude,
weeks.
well, you'll hurt yourself. I mean,
100%.
you're just, that's not the right
Yeah.
way to do it.
And
Whereas, like, hey, I haven't worked out in a long time.
Yeah.
I'm going to set up a pull-up bar.
Yep.
And every time I walk through that doorway, I'm going to do 1 pull-up or
Yep.
5 pull-ups, or I'm going to sit in, okay, now I'm a little bit more flexible. I'm going to do some burpees, or I'm going to do, pick your thing, whatever
Mhm.
works, 40, 80, 100.
Right.
And I'm going to split up pull-ups, or I'm sorry,
Yep.
not pull-ups, but like push-ups. And I'm going to spread that out through the course of the day.
Yeah.
And there it is, or I'm in my office and I'm going to push back from my chair and I'm just going to do a bunch of
Yeah.
bands, dips real quickly.
Yep.
Those small, I think that is where small steps actually really
Yeah,
can help
100%.
because you're not going to hurt yourself. I
Right.
think,
Yeah. And and I'll be the first to tell anybody, like, I understand like gyms can be intimidating to people who are just getting back into it. So like but they can also provide one of the most motivating environments that you can go into, because I know this is really weird to some people, but most people are actually fairly decent. They're fairly decent human beings. They'll actually help you if you ask for help. And most people actually don't give a shit about you because they're doing their own thing. So
except for all those thoughts that are out there doing
let's
setting
not
up their camera. And
let's
then,
not get into
okay,
scandals
all
now.
right,
But
all right,
yeah,
all right.
no, but there's, like, you can find a really good support network there. So if you are considering going to a gym, but do your homework on gyms. Seriously, like that is one of those things. But it can really, really help you on your journey as well. But yeah, fitness, the pluses that it provides is, look, you can get a lot of health benefits. You'll be less susceptible to mechanical injuries. You'll have a component of strength and longevity that comes with that. Your body will start to operate a little bit better. You're going to be, it's not a cure-all for things, but it can also help mitigate things like heart disease and many other.
So maybe a fair way of saying it, because before, because I don't want someone to say, "Oh, you said if I went to the gym, I won't get heart disease."
Yep.
That's not what
It mitigates.
Well, look,
At best,
but there's all kinds of other variables like
Mhm.
genetics and
Oh,
just,
100%.
environment. But like,
you'll never beat your lineage.
But generally speaking, I don't think you're going to find a single doctor out there that says you're in shape. This is horrible.
This is the worst decision you ever made. And also you get discounts on insurance. So like I there's actually fiscal and financial benefits in numerous places to where I hate to even phrase it that way, but yeah, like you do get rewarded for being healthier in many ways.
Well, be careful there. Be careful there. They're not. Don't trust them. Okay, we can go to that, but one thing I did want to mention though is before we move on to Blake, is shin splints versus stress fracture. Okay, when I was younger, running track, if I ran on the wrong surfaces, it felt like my shins were busted up. You may still get that these days. It doesn't mean you have something major. You just need to rest it. As an older person, I need to worry more about the stress fractures these days than I do the shin splints, because I probably don't have the muscle to have that go on there.
Yeah.
So I mean, I just wanted to make sure.
And
I mentioned that.
And that's a great point, because like there are a lot of variables when it comes to that. So you have to be mindful the older you get, especially the type of training that you do, because look, you're not going to perform at the level a 20-year-old's going to. Like it depends on where you're at.
Well,
but
it depends
I mean,
on where you well, and also depends on who you are. I was probably, in my humble opinion, for me, just knowing me, I was in the peak of my prime in my late 30s and early 40s.
Yeah.
I was healthier and more and stronger in both physical strength, endurance, mental, everything than I ever was when I was 20. You know, you're
but
like,
your
you're
body's
20 and you're a stud. It's like, no, I didn't become a stud until I was in my mid 30s, early 40s.
Yeah, and I think that.
But the thing is, the body can recover quicker when you're younger, no matter whether you were in better shape or I was, which I was as well. Okay, because I didn't have the discipline. Your body recovers better when you're younger.
Hey, he just saw my surgery. You're absolutely correct there, Paul. You are absolutely correct. There is no arguing that. I am not recovering anywhere near what I would have if I would have been younger.
Yes. 100%. Yeah, you know, what it really comes down to that I want to hammer home is like the net benefits to being physically capable. It outweighs any potential negatives. Like you mentioned, look, there are considerations genetically. There's family lineage. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. Paul brought up really good points.
Diet.
And I, and to one of Paul's points, and I'll kind of just start to wrap it up here. But when you do look at things like insurance, and I'm happy Paul brought this up because there are caveats to that. The caveat to my insurance policy, which I got, it's like a $500,000, I think, or whatever. I got that for $25, but I'm also 30 years old. I'm physically very fit. I'm very capable. I have no medical history. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't do any of that. So there's a lot of caveats to that. And Paul, you make a really good point because those are other variables. And there's some that I didn't even list, but there are other variables that do impact that. But if you do some of those things and you still work out, it can still potentially help you. I'm not guaranteeing anything, but there are potential benefits there. So I am happy that Paul brought that up. But overall, like, look, as we're going to start talking about, like we'll get into some homesteading and a few other things. It's like, dude, like you still got to be somewhat.
Well, you won't be able to do some of these things if you're not even physically fit, and let alone some of the kinetic stuff, during that episode.
Right. Yeah.
But I just want to kind of maybe wrap up your side from just and then everybody, if anybody's got, another, a comment or an argument, but at the end of the day, look, Redbeard's not sitting here saying, I'm going to give you my PT routine, whatever. I guess if you're interested, leave a comment, and he can chime in and that. But the ultimate point here is in preparedness is physical fitness. That's the point. And if you're watching this, you're an adult, you know what the fuck we're talking about. I mean, whatever it is. And, and if it's just getting up and doing 50 push-ups through the course of a day, 5 at a time or 10 at a time, getting up and just not being lethargic, being mobile, working the synovial fluid in your joints, in the morning, stretching in the morning, again, doing some pull-ups, just doing some shadow bot, whatever it is, that's the real takeaway, right? If you want to be prepared, you want to be prepared for whatever's coming. You ain't throwing on that plate carrier, right? If you can't even do 5 burpees, you know what I'm saying? You're just not doing it, right?
Well, and to kind of go off of that to end what I'm saying, and I have another portion that I'll add near the end because I think it'll dovetail really well into what Blake and Paul are going to say. But I'll save that. Keep it simple, stupid. It's literally like when it comes to exercising, nutrition, and stuff like that, just to generally be fit. Keep it simple, stupid. Don't be afraid to ask questions and consult with people that actually know what they're doing. And I'm looking at those people that want to say be shred. No, stop it. No. There are people that will blow smoke up your ass. So be very careful.
Well, so on that note, and maybe we save that for another podcast because I mean, look, this is a multi-million-dollar industry. So there's dude, every time you pull up your YouTube channel or something like that, you're being inundated with
Yep.
some like the latest and greatest. Eat
Wanna
this avocado. Yeah,
shred your abs in 3 days. It's like, nope,
no, it's not.
that's not how
shit
that works.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, the
So-
real world is not a cheat.
Yeah,
Right, yeah.
right.
Oh, I love my favorite. It's like American special forces. You know, they use this. They put this thing on their abs, and it gives them electrical charges, the equivalent of doing 3,000 sit-ups in 3 minutes. I'm like, oh Jesus Christ.
Mark, you watch a lot of television at 3 a.m, don't you?
Well, you know what? That's not fair because I do have the television on for some, background like white noise to help me sleep.
Yep.
But
I know.
there was a better joke in
to
there.
that point, though, I mean, that's
let's
kind of
bring
the
it over
thing.
to you. Yeah, let's bring it over to you now.
I was like, kind of to that thing. I mean, Redbeard, you're talking about it is your body is a huge thing.
Yeah.
And realistically, though, there's two things in this world that no force, no man, no nothing can take away from you, and that's your mind and your body, and both need to be honed. My body right now is not honed. I'll be the first to admit that. I could definitely do a little more in that regard. But it's something that we do all need to take very, very seriously. And to the point of the mind as well is, we need to educate ourselves and truly educate ourselves beyond the point of just having education, but achieving wisdom. And that's kind of one of the things is we live in a society where, you can look anything up instantaneously. But to have an understanding of it, to grasp the concept is something that doesn't exist really anymore.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that, for a solution that you can take in this world is to try to educate yourself in whatever fascinates you.
Yeah.
Be it from just something you like about the natural world and you want to really dig in, like maybe like trees. So I really want to understand trees. I want to know every little thing about them. Or maybe you enjoy fishing, so you really want to dig into that. Well, these are all real world skills that can be applicable to a let's just say shit hits the fan situation where you can assist somebody else or you can assist your family in being able to know, hey, listen, the medicinal properties of a birch. If I take birch bark and I boil it, I can make something kind of akin to aspirin. Or if I want to process that further, I can make an actual drug known as aspirin that can help a community that can no longer make that. Or if I'm a fisher and I enjoy every little aspect about fishing, well, I can figure out when the proper time to harvest the fish and what the best and most efficient way is to do that, to bring in a large bounty for my community, but then also allow for that bounty to be harvested year after year. And I think these things can be achieved by just reading, discussing with people that know, what this sort of world is. And I think one of the things that's really oftentimes overlooked because we have access to the internet and we can look these things up instantaneously is have this information in a form that you don't have to hold in your brain, but doesn't require power. Like one of my pastimes is I love to collect books. I have quite the library, and no, I have not read all of them. Someday maybe I will read everything in my current library, but it would probably take a long time. But the nice part is those hold knowledge in them passively. They don't require anything other than you digging into them and getting that information out. So I think that's one thing you can do to prepare in this world is increase your library. Do it in such a way that, it has some general information about how to survive, how to produce food, how to maybe make some medical supplies if you need to. So these are just kind of one of the few things that I sort of want to touch on this evening. So
if you want to go a little bit further on that, because I just wanted to throw out there, like, I actually think if you're serious about prepping, then one of your things has to be a library, hard copy books. Hard copy books. And if you get them on a CD or some other type of electronic, external hard drive or something like that. Yeah, right. But to your point, you've got to take into consideration, and I know you and Paul could speak about this for a long time, but you've got to take in consideration that you're going to have some other, severe to limited power opportunities. So what are you going to do in the absence? Well, to me, it's a hard copy book. That's Cuban space, or so Cuban weight, excuse me. So that's going to take up room in your rucksack or take up room in your vehicle. It weighs something. If it's in your vehicle, that's not as important. But if it's in your ruck, it is. So you've got to really start thinking about okay, well, what are the things and what are the books I want to have? To your point, Blake. But I couldn't agree more. You've got to have some books. You got to have some.
If you want to blend, though, and I mean, this I guess takes me to the next point that I really wanted to discuss tonight. If you want to blend the old world and the new world together, that's a beautiful thing. So let's take, I mean, you know, my bookshelves downstairs. Oh my gosh, there's no way in the world I could pack every car I have in my front yard and I wouldn't be able to fit all my books in them. You know, I mean, that's not something physically you can take with you. But what you can do is scan all of those books, put them on a hard drive, and put that hard drive in your back pocket.
Yeah.
Now I have my physical copies of my book. I have my digital copies of my book that I can take with me anywhere in the world that take a very low amount of power to be able to access and to query that information. So, you know, I think that's one of the things that's really unique in our time frame right now. There was a lot of great ideas of the past and antiquity, things that were incredible that couldn't be achieved because the technology wasn't there yet. So there's tremendous amounts to learn from the past and use with modern technology to leverage those concepts. And if we can blend those, be it from food production to force multiplying to, you know, just surveillance around your home, production of food to production of BTUs to keep yourself warm in the wintertime, or taking those exact same things, if you had a boiler and saving the steam power and powering what you can off of it. I mean, there's a plethora of things we can do in the modern age. And, you know, you hear this at first and you go, oh my gosh, this is going to cost me so much to do this stuff, to put a solar panel up or to do a boiler system or to even start with something simple like having a small flock of chickens. It's going to cost me X amount of dollars. Well, yes, in the start it will, but this is an investment into the independence of your future and your family's future. And it depends on how you want to look into it. And as we see with the price of food right now, I mean, man, having a cow and maybe a couple chickens and a pig or something like that, that's pretty enticing sort of concept in this world right now, because it can be a regenerative amount of food that you can produce on property that you're not relying on another source for. So I think that's kind of the thing is, you know, blending the old world with the new world, having these redundant sources of backup information that you can draw on from a collapse situation. And I'm not going to say it's going to be like Mad Max. And even if it is like Mad Max, it's not going to be like Mad Max overnight. But this world has changed, and it's going to require people to exploit knowledge and exploit what's available to them. You know, I mean, we live in a world of extreme abundance, and at the same time, incredible scarcity because of the cost of goods and the difficulty of living. Well, all right, if you know how to tear something apart and make something new, you are inherently a much more valuable individual. Well, can you do that on multiple scales and multiple different iterations across everything in your household to try to maximize what you have available to you?
Yeah. So, you know, on that note, and I was kind of looking behind me, you know, I don't really have my house set up, you know, and I'm trying to get the hell out of here like everybody else is. But to your point, so like, you know, I do in my box, I've got 2 different boxes full of books, but I have one box that's set up that's just the type of books that you're talking about. It's books on butchering. I've never personally butchered a cow. Could I do it? Yeah, I think I could. I mean, I've butchered plenty. You know, I've always done my own deer processing, you know, small game and everything. You know, a cow is a much larger, you know, animal, but my learning curve will be much lower than the average person's, right? Just because of that knowledge. But then if I have a book and I have a reference, it's an even less of a learning curve. I'll probably fucking nail it and have a home run the very first time I do it. Yeah. If I, you know, to your point, Blake, if I had, you know, Grandpa Johnson over my shoulder telling me what that cut is, or if I had that book and I'm like, oh, okay, that's where I'm going to use these guys for this. I'm going to do that. Yep. And that applies to, you know, so many other aspects. Like, okay, I can build a shit ton of rudimentary shelters. Yep. But if I had a small little, you know, pocketbook thing that said, hey, but if you want to build something that's going to be a little bit more robust and it's going to do this, well, I mean, okay, so maybe that's not one. So as we talk about being prepared, so maybe I wouldn't have a book on shelters, because between, you know, us, if we were anywhere near each other or talking to each other as a group of people, like I've got zero doubt my ability to build shelter for me right now. Very robust. I could live in it during the wintertime. Would it be as robust as I wanted it to be? Well, no, because then it's going to get into physical capabilities, the tools, the resources, things like that. But I know if I ever linked up with a couple other like-minded people, I'd be like, oh yeah, we could build our own log cabin. Yeah.
And that's, you're going the right way right there. That's what it's about. What can you bring to the table and who can you bring together? Form your tribe. I mean, that's really where we are.
And I was throwing that out there for you and Paul to comment, because that's where your brain got me going. Is like, you know, again, so I know what, you know, I used to always make the joke, you know, jack of all trades, master of none. But that's good for my immediate, but you know, Blake, you know more about this. Paul knows more about this. Redbeard knows more
Yep.
about this. But when we all come together, oh Jesus, criminy! Like that's like really we'll be
Yes,
limited by if we don't have electricity or gas operated
Yeah.
engines, and then do we have long saws and stuff like that? That's the only thing that's going to limit us. And I guarantee we'll probably overcome that just by the thought process.
Well, and I think that's one of the things too that you just brought up with like the saws and whatnot. You know, one of the other things I'd love to collect is I'm a tool junkie. Like my wife kind of loves it because I don't go to the bar drinking. I buy tools instead. And one of the things that over the last year, well, probably really since the beginning of the whole crazy lockdown time period, is I've really been stepping out and buying hand powered tools, a full carpentry set of antiquity tools. So basically, if I have to build a house the old way, I can, because I don't need power drills. I don't need these big saws because I've bought all of the man-powered versions of them. You know, and that's kind of one of those things. Maybe I never use those tools. Maybe I only use them for a hobby because it's kind of cool to use the old stuff.
Yep.
Maybe I need them, and holy crap, that will save my life one day. And it's a cheap investment for those sorts of things.
With no power, you're going to need them. And that's why I've been investing in them too. And you know, again, physically, I've used them, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I need to exercise a bit. But you know, we could go back to that later. But absolutely there. But as far as books go, I just want to make sure I mention this before I forget it. Hard copy for anything that is a reference. If you want to read a Jack Carr book or an Ian Fleming book, digital's fine. That's okay. But why do we get the hard copies? It's not for me. It's for my children and their children and so on. They need to have that stuff. And as far as, you know, if you can get a hold of a set of encyclopedias, grab them. But as you know, as far as the how to do stuff, the skin a deer, how to do all this stuff, you know, you may not be alive to teach them, so they may struggle. But the one thing you want to do is put some pencil notes in there. You know, if you cut this part and you expose it to shit, then that's don't go there. You've ruined it. And you know, those are the type of things you can do to those hard copy books and pass them on.
Well, and I think that's it exactly. I mean, if we really want to think about what humanity is, it's legacy. It's how do we bring about and rear the next generation, keep this crazy mad dash known as life going, you know, and we're not necessarily going to be able to be there to give the tools to each generation thereafter. And that's that's really one of the amazing things is immortality has been achieved through the pages of books. I mean, that's you really want to live forever. You know, it used to be write a book. Now though, oh my gosh, some of the books that are being written, those aren't going to be lasting too terribly long. But beside that point is if we can keep that information around, we can keep it growing. It's so much better for humanity.
So I'm just going to try to bring this back over so we can come to Paul, but just kind of wrapping this up, because we could honestly sit and spend all night just talking about books, but I think the main takeaway, you know, as Paul said, Blake said, you said, I think we all get it. But just to reiterate it for people who are watching or listening, it's like, some things having on electrons, it's a stupid military term for electronic, you know, medium, you know, whether it's a hard drive or a thumb drive, whatever. There's some things that you want there, but there are definitely other periodicals. And look, and again, it's down the hallway in my tool room. I've got a little storage area. I've got map sheets. I've got map books. I mean, like, so of my area. So like, if I actually had if I had to navigate to Blake and under a crisis, I've got map sheets, you know, and like the bike trails, all the other trail networks. I could actually do that and stay pretty much off grid, if you want to call it that. I wouldn't have to be on the main hardballs. Maybe I'd have to get on a main hardball every now and then, but it's that kind of stuff. You have to have those hard copies, and then exactly to what Paul said. And, you know, and then you got to leave notes like, oh, this trail washed out 5 years ago. And what you need to do is you bypass here, and here in your dog leg. Or, hey, you know, if you don't remove the anal cavity, you know, of a deer, tread.
You're going to get sepsis and die.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, that's the level of intensity of this information. It seems simple to people that have been doing it, but if you were never taught that and you went, well, I can just, clean that off. No, at the very least, you cut that meat away. At the very least, you cut a couple inches down, get it away, get it off to the side, because the last thing you want to do is now you have an entire family that's pooping through a screen and they're dead.
Yep.
Well, and then so again, because we're talking preparedness, so without getting into some of the I don't want to get too much into medical here tonight. I mean, but to your point right there, you got to have antidiarrheal. You've got to have all kinds of other medicines too.
Yep.
And everybody fails to remember this. The moment you take one, you've got one less, right?
Yep.
So, I just used the bandage.
Finite.
It's not like Star Wars or Star Trek or something. Now there's 2 more bandages. No, now you have one less bandage, or you have one less antidiarrheal, or one less antimicrobial, or whatever it is that you're doing. You're depleting those resources. But to everything we're saying, and this started with Blake, I'm coming full circle. But if you've got a good wilderness survival periodical that's helping you look at botanicals that can supplement or and you can use in lieu of your acetaminophen. Okay, well, you could do this with bark, or you could do this with sap, or here's a special plant. And my only point on this is my word of caution. We all do not have the time to go out and practice and research this. But I think Paul's one who said it, or maybe it was Blake. But then have the goddamn resource. And so if it does go down, guess what you'll be doing? Crash freaking course on botanicals or something like that. Or
absolutely.
Or it's that book you just read like a retard. Okay, I'm falling asleep. I'm going to read 2 pages, and I'm just going to get a little bit smarter. Or you're taking it out and you're making it into a game with you and the family and the kids when you're out hiking or camping. Hey, who can go find me, nettle or thistle or whatever it is I'm looking for,
Absolutely.
that type of stuff.
And
I mean, and that's great stuff. I mean, that's what it's all about. So sorry, Jeremy, you wanted to say something.
No, I was just going to say real quick, one thing that I feel like a lot of people kind of overlook too is, dude, you've got to have some form of entertainment. So if you're collecting books, right, have a couple pieces of nonfiction, have something that you can get lost in, because I'm here to tell you, if you are in a bad situation, a bad way, you go off the road, I'm here to tell you, dude, if you have a book or some cards or something to lift your spirits, being able to kind of distance yourself a little bit and reset your mind, you will have such a benefit to that, because you're revitalized. It's like having chocolate in your bag and you're like, oh shit, I got chocolate.
It's the reason there's charms in an MRE. It really is.
I'm going to throw this out there as a cautionary tale. The books, the works of fiction that, as Paul was saying, we'll come over to Paul because he brought up here's an Ian Fleming. Okay, that's great. You individually can get lost in it, but the rest of the group doesn't benefit until you're done. So to me, it's always been I love how you said cards. It's card games, or learn what a chessboard and a checker set looks like. My favorite time ever, dice. But my favorite time ever playing chess was in the field in the military, where somebody took the MRE cardboard off an MRE box, made a chess set with all just pieces of cardboard, and it was awesome because the pawns. One side of the pawns was our lieutenant, and his name was Schultz, and then the other side was this private named Nesvold. And it was and then everyone was having fun because, so to your point, then you're doing it, you're passing the time. It's also sharpens your brain. You got to do it, but then you got to make sure, and everybody participates, because even people who weren't playing were watching. It's your Nesvold takes your Schultz, or whatever. The privite took the lieutenant. So I would just throw that out there. I would just be if you go down that road, it's got to be. Again, just even the games and the things that get everybody involved, and if it does something mentally or physically, I mean, come on,
it's one of those things to where I don't think it can be understated. You've got to have something that's going to bring you a sense of motivation, especially for the worst times. And that's why anytime I go hiking, I always have at least one chocolate bar or something like that. Notwithstanding the fact that you need sugar as a human being.
But it's lickies and chewies. It's lickies and chewies.
You could be halfway through a really crappy trek. You've been rained on all day. It's cold. It's miserable. And you see that chocolate bar or that little packet of coffee, and you're like, I'm gonna start a fire, make some coffee real quick,
Make a
and
mocha.
yeah, and you're good to go. And it's like little
Spirits
things, man.
100% back
Dude,
up with
yeah.
a cup of hot
And
milk.
that's why things
And
like
you know
games and such are so important. I
Yeah.
mean, they really, really are.
Just real quick plug for Mission Critical. I don't think you guys, well, Paul, I think you were on that episode, but we actually taught this as a class once.
Yep.
Talking about
Yep.
these exact things. So if you're watching and listening, if you're kind of starting to get a little interested, just go back through our library. I don't remember. I think that was probably 2 generations ago. So that was like probably like in the 15 to 25 episodes, something like that. But and then we did it. I think we Paul, didn't we string that out for like 2 or 3 episodes in the evening where we taught that class? Yeah. But a lot of everything we're bringing up right now was part of that class. So,
but not the entertainment. I don't think we brought up the entertainment.
Well, I think it's something about you've got to have somebody who makes you laugh.
Yeah, I think we talked about like chocolate. Like,
yeah,
but that's community.
If we did it,
I would say longer term. I have a little extra bag with entertainment, like cards and these different games in them. And if I have the opportunity, I'm grabbing that thing. Or if the power goes out, long-term power outages, that's why I really have it, not to bug out. Long-term power outages, I have a little tiny case and it has, an Uno deck. It has a card deck, regular card deck. It has, rope tying things so you can exercise, learn knots and stuff. I mean, I put all kinds of stuff in there for entertainment. And it's to make sure that once you lose that access to the digital world, that you can do things that will entertain you and get your mind off of everything. Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Paul, before we come back to you, because you've got your points that I think you want to make, but you just made me think of some. And again, I totally forgot that we had taught that we did that as a video. Like, again, I think that was 2 episodes. But I would actually, request people go back and watch or listen to that again, because we're not doing it any justice. And to everything you're just saying right here, right now, like, whether it's a backgammon game, whether it's a chess set or what, there's so many cribbage. There's another great one.
Throwing dice or something like that.
But my point just on this is there are so many little attention to detail issues. So maybe it already seems like, well, you guys haven't given us a whole lot of solutions here. Well, actually we have, which is you got to start paying attention to the details.
Morale is huge.
Yeah. And morale's a huge thing.
It keeps your mind sharp too.
But also the knowledge, the teamwork, the camaraderie, because if you think it's all like, I'm all jocked up. I got my AR, my plate carrier, my Mitch helmet, and I'm going to do CQB. Like, okay. Yeah. That's probably not going to happen. And, I wanted to do a clip here from like the very first Terminator movie where he's having the flashback to the future. And it's like, the hunter killers are pursuing him and the guys in the vehicle. Like, dude, if it's that level, you're so effed anyway, right?
Yeah.
It's these other things that you should be thinking and taking into consideration right now, because hopefully it never gets to that level. These other things, for some of us, it's already at that level right now. I can't afford to have a streaming service because that shit is, God, how does it cost? I mean, I bet there's people paying $100 a month for streaming services.
I'm sure.
How in the hell can you do that when gas is $4 a gallon? You know what I'm saying? It's like, so even some of these techniques and these things we're talking about right now, they pertain to the right here and right now.
Yeah, I've played more dice games with my family in like the last month and a half, and I tell you what, it's making me want to go out and buy games like Clue and Monopoly again. And risk and Chutes and Ladders and stuff like that, because it's like you realize, like, dude, like, this is fun. Like, who needs a gaming console when you have
absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, and that's the thing. Like, and Mark knows this a little bit. Like, I love dice games, specifically dice games that have to deal with strategy. Like one of my favorite games that's out there. Call me a super nerd, but I love Warhammer. I absolutely love military strategy, and that's the thing, is there's a lot of facets of it that can keep you busy throughout the winter, which is typically what I do it, from building the models, painting them, to having friends over, playing the game, to discussing strategy. I mean, it's an all-encompassing strategy or all-encompassing game that if I really wanted to make that my one single form of entertainment when the power goes out, I could. I could spend hours and hours and hours and hours on it.
100%.
But the thing is it's not just those. It's all the
Yeah.
other games. It's that, like you said, that morale building.
Yeah.
It's important stuff, and it helps hone the mind. It helps build community, and that's really kind of at the crux of the matter. If you really want to get prepared for anything, have a community, have people you can rely on, have people you can help out. You know, and this is the way you do that. This is the way you build that community, is through socializing. It's breaking bread in essence. So
hey, here's kind of what I'm thinking right now. I know Paul's got to bounce here because speaking of all the things that we're trying to do, you know, Paul's got to make money, right? So Paul's got another commitment here in about 30-45 minutes. Paul, is that about correct?
Yeah, I can probably extend it a little bit.
Well, here's what I'm going to throw out there for your guys' thoughts. We're at an hour, and you know, with the ultimate goal of trying to get these down to a little bit of time, do we want to call this the end of part one, take a slight break, and then everybody comes back and we just do part two? Paul, you start off on part two, and then you get the pick of the litter, so to speak, until you've got to bounce on part two, and then we can wrap up part two. Because again, just like every conversation, boys and girls, we had a game plan. You know, we do our little pregame and we talk on the phone or on the computer beforehand. We kind of had a pregame, and I don't know. You boys tell me. I think we've already gone 7 different side conversations already. But because there's so much to this, right? It's so important. But my thought would be we could wrap this up. This would be a shorter podcast. Everybody take a break, go to the bathroom, whatever. We come back and we do part two, and then Paul, you kind of start kicking it on part two.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? Oh, well, it's either that or we keep going until Paul has to call it a night.
No, I like that.
Okay. Blake, are you okay with that?
yeah, that's good by me.
All right, boys and girls. So there it is. You just had there it is. There's the decision. We're going to call this the end of part one.
Yep.
Hopefully you found this entertaining. We're not going to do your sign out because this is technically we're not done.
Yep.
Everybody's just going to take a break. These guys, they're taking time away from their families and their lives. Give him a chance to go like smoochy smooch with his new wife. And, maybe grab a little bit of food. And then, because that's what Redbeard and I are going to do. We're
minor details.
Yeah, minor details. I was actually thinking we could compare beards. But anyway, and then we'll come back. We'll do part two. We're going to continue this conversation. We're going to jump over to Paul, talk, and I don't want to say I apologize, but if you're not having these conversations with your friends, and if your conversations, maybe you guys are a million times better, and you guys can just okay, now we talk about subject 1, 2, 3. You just see how many other subcategories that just came up out of nowhere just from our basic conversations. Right. And then so for me, being prepared or getting prepared means if you're not having these conversations, because just starting a conversation, asking one question, and if you're not somewhere along this road like we are with your friends, then you're probably not thinking this through well enough to tell the truth, right? Because there should be a million questions going through your minds.
And especially once I do the second thing I'm going to talk about near the end, because we talked about this the other night, that creates it creates as many solutions as it does problems.
I would have phrased it differently. It creates as many problems as it does solutions.
That's fair.
Yeah, I just want to say it that way.
So,
all right. So here's the deal. We're going to wrap this up. This is the end of part 1 for episode 36. Getting prepared. We're all going to take a break, and then we'll be right back. And maybe Steven will join us. We'll see if he's back at that time. But anybody else got any final comments before we just take a quick break? All right. Then let's just take a quick break, and we'll rejoin everybody on the other side, which will be the beginning of part 2.
See you on the flip side.
All right, everybody. Be good. Hope you enjoyed part 1.
Yep.
And part 2 should be just equally entertaining.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
All right. We'll talk to everybody in a couple minutes. All right. Bye.
Cheers.
Woo!